The deep sky was full of light and fire. The war between human colonies had been going on for years, and no one remembered why it had started. Among the many ships that floated above the world of Iradian, there was one called Starlens. It was made of strong metal and lined with laser cannons, shining faintly in the glow of the nearby sun. Captain Ethan Ward looked through the viewing glass at the flashes of battle far away. He was tired, but his eyes were still sharp. He was a man who had been through too many fights, lost too many friends, and learned that orders sometimes meant the difference between life and death. His team on Vanguard 9 waited quietly for his next word. Everything was calm for a few moments until a voice broke through the radio. It was a distress call, full of static and fear. A royal transport was under attack by enemy fighters. The voice called for help again and again before it went silent. Ethan's heart pounded. He looked at the radar screen. The royal ship was close, caught in a field of broken satellites. His commander had given strict orders to avoid any side missions, to hold their position and protect the main line. But the voice of that cry stayed in his mind. He knew what it sounded like when people were about to die. He turned to the crew. "Prepare the rescue team," he said quietly. Lieutenant Nora Hill frowned. "Captain, command said no off-route action. If we move, they'll court-martial you." Ethan gave a small, hard smile. "If we don't, someone innocent dies. That's not a choice I can live with." The engines roared to life. The starlens turned slowly, breaking formation. Red warning lights flashed across the control room as his communications officer tried to jam the command link. Ethan ignored the shouts on the radio. He guided the great ship straight toward the burning point in space, where the royal signal had come from. When they arrived, what they found was chaos. The royal ship turned slowly, its hull split open like a wound. Oxygen leaked out in spirals of white mist, and broken metal floated everywhere. There was fire, smoke, and the glow of dying engines. Small escape pods hung dead in the drifting wreckage. Ethan ordered a boarding shuttle. Small craft shot forward, bouncing under the pressure of the broken gravity fields. When the hatch opened, he and 4 soldiers stepped out into darkness. The air smelled of burnt metal and blood. Alarms echoed through the empty corridors. He led them through narrow tunnels, looking for survivors. The scanners showed one living person trapped deep inside. Every door along the way was sealed by melted locks. Ethan used his plasma cutter to open the final hatch and found her, there, the princess. She was young, pale from lack of air, her lips blue. She lay inside a cracked glass pod that had lost power. Her hair floated around her face like golden smoke. The life support monitor flashed red. The ship's generator was dead, and the pod could not restart on its own. "Help me get the conduit open," Ethan said. The soldiers worked fast, reconnecting lines and rerouting power. Sparks flew, but the system stayed dark. The power core was gone. Ethan looked at his wrist screen. His own suit still had a working life module. Without thinking twice, he ripped out the injector port from his arm and connected it to the Pod's bio line. His blood began to flow into the system. Nora gasped. "Captain, you're going to kill yourself." "Not if I finish this," Ethan said through his teeth. The biocircuit in his veins began to glow faintly as the pressure equalized. His blood carried nanosealant that activated the pod's circulator. The pod's lights rose to green. Princess's chest moved again. She opened her eyes, confused and weak. "Do," she whispered, her voice just a breath. "Stay still," Ethan said softly. "You're safe now." Within minutes, the rescue ship docked and carried them out. Ethan's vision went dark at the edges, but he forced himself to stay awake until the star lens confirmed their escape. Then he fell to his knees. His veins glowed dull red where the connection had fused his blood with hers. 2 days later, when he opened his eyes in the sickbay, his body felt heavy but alive. The doctor said something strange had happened. The royal ship's emergency system had accepted his blood as a command ID. Binding it to the princess's life circuit, no one could explain it. As for Ethan, he did not care for the science. He only knew that the princess had lived. Outside the medbay window, the lights of Valoria's royal world glowed in soft gold. He had disobeyed orders, broken command rules, and risked his life for one person. But looking up at the stars, he felt no regret. Somewhere in the royal dome below, the young princess breathed because of him. What he did not know was that his act of courage had linked their fates forever in, that the one waiting for him next would not be an enemy soldier, but a waiting queen. The royal world of Valoria, shone like a jewel under the wide yellow sun. Tall towers rose from silver lands, and rivers of light ran through every city. It was a world of peace on the surface, but underneath it carried the fear of wars and the weight of power. The royal palace stood on the cliff edge above the capital. Its walls were bright white marble, its roofs lined with gold tiles that sparkled in the wind. Captain Ethan Ward arrived there in silence 3 weeks after the rescue. The wound in his arm had healed, but strange red lines still ran under his skin like glowing threads. The doctors had said his blood was mixed with the royal system now, though no one knew what that truly meant. The palace guards met him at the gate. They wore shining uniforms and carried long spears that gave off a faint hum. When they led him through the tall gates, Ethan looked up at faces carved into the stone pillars. Every one of them was a ruler from another time. He felt small under their gaze, but also curious. The air smelled of flowers and wind. Soft music came from the distant gardens. In the great hall, Queen Helena waited on a high throne. She was tall, calm, and beautiful in a way that made people lower their voices. Her eyes were sharp, pale gray, and they examined everything. The moment she saw Ethan, she stood. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice smooth and cold. "You saved my daughter's life. For that, you have the gratitude of the royal house of Alden." Ethan bowed. "Your Majesty, I only did what any man should do when a life is in danger." The Queen watched him closely. Such modesty is rare from a soldier who breaks orders for compassion. "Tell me, what gave you that bravery?" Ethan lifted his gaze. "Duty, Your Majesty, but not only to command. Duty to what is right." Her lips curved faintly, though it was not quite a smile. Interesting words. "You speak like someone who believes more in people than in power." The soldiers on each side of her glanced at one another, uneasy. The Queen turned her gaze toward one of them. "You may go," she said softly. "Leave us." When the hall was empty, she walked down from her throne and circled Ethan slowly. "You risked your life," she said, "and somehow your blood merged with my daughter's system. The doctors tell me the connection cannot be undone. That is rare, unnatural even." Ethan stood still. "I understand, Your Majesty. If there are tests to be done, I agree to them." The Queen stopped in front of him. "Yes, there will be tests. But more than that, I will require you to stay within my walls for now. I cannot let a man walk free whose body carries power over the royal line." Ethan's heart tightened. "Am I a guest or a prisoner?" "Both," she said, and turned away. 2 guards appeared beside him and quietly escorted him out. They took him through long corridors to a quiet wing of the palace. The room they gave him was bright and clean. It had wide windows overlooking the gardens, but guards stood at every door. For days, doctors came and went. They took samples, checked his heartbeat, his cells, his blood pressure. They spoke in low voices, and Ethan caught pieces of their words: shared gene patterns, mutual response, symbiotic link. It all sounded like nonsense to him, but one thing was clear. His life was now tied to the princesses. At night, when the palace grew quiet, Ethan sat by the window. He could see the far towers glowing softly and the stars rising above them. When he closed his eyes, he sometimes heard a voice in his mind. It was faint and distant, but soft. "Ethan." He always opened his eyes at once, his heart racing. He knew the voice. It was Clara's. He never told the doctors or the guards. It was his secret, something he could not explain or share. Sometimes she spoke only a few words. Sometimes just a feeling: fear, confusion, sadness, gratitude. It came and went like a wave. One morning, as he dressed, there was a knock at his door. When it opened, he saw Clara standing there, pale but alive. She smiled gently. "I asked my mother to let me speak to you," she said. They finally agreed. Ethan bowed slightly. "You should be resting, Princess." "I've rested too long," she said.
Oh.
Her eyes lingered on the glowing mark that ran down his arm. "They tell me you gave part of your life to me. How do I thank someone for that?" "You already have," he said. "You survived." "That's enough." She shook her head slowly. "My mother fears what she does not understand. She will not let you go until she knows how deep this bond goes." He looked at her. "And what do you think of it?" Clara gave a small smile. "I think it means we were both meant to live, and maybe for a reason greater than this palace." Her words stayed with him long after she left. The days turned to nights again, and he began to see that his rescue had changed not only her life but his own. The Queen's shadow now watched over him wherever he went, but somewhere beyond that shadow there was a new light. He only hoped it would not be one that burned too bright to survive. The palace of Valoria was beautiful in daylight, but full of secrets at night. The halls seemed brighter than the stars outside, yet every warm smile hid a quiet plan. Ethan Ward had lived there for more than 2 months now. On the surface, he looked like a royal guest. His clothes were fine, his food was brought on silver trays, and his quarters had every comfort. But behind the kindness, he could feel the invisible chains that held him. Each morning, guards followed him when he walked through the gardens. They said it was for his safety, but he knew they were there to watch him. The Queen would sometimes summon him to the throne room. She asked calm questions about his health and the strange lines of light that still ran under his skin. Her words were soft, but her eyes watched him like a hawk. Ethan had begun to notice whispers in the palace halls. Courtiers would stop talking when he entered a room. Ministers stared at him with interest or fear. Some bowed deeply, others looked angry that a soldier had risen above his station. He had become a symbol, part hero, part mystery. Many believed that whoever controlled Ethan might control the royal bloodline itself. Behind the heavy doors of her private room, Queen Helena listened to her advisors argue. "He could be an asset," said one older man with silver hair. "If we study his blood, we might create an unbreakable defense system for the crown. And if he refuses to serve us?" Another replied. "What if the bond gives him power over the air? One whisper from him could end our rule." The Queen listened without showing emotion. She already had her own thoughts. She had once been a scientist before she became a ruler, and she understood better than anyone the power hidden in something as small as a drop of blood. Meanwhile, Princess Clara visited Ethan whenever she could. She often brought him books and tried to distract him from his isolation. Their talks were easy and quiet. They discussed childhood dreams, battles lost and won, and the strange link between them. "I can still feel your heartbeat sometimes," Clara said one evening, when they sat near the glass window. "Even when you are far away?" Ethan nodded. "I feel it too. It's strange but peaceful, like knowing someone else is out there watching over me." She smiled softly. "Then maybe this bond is not just science. Maybe it means something more." They talked until the stars faded into dawn. But across the hallway, someone else listened. One of the Queen's advisors, a man named Leonard Vance, had been spying through the corridor mirror system. The next morning, he delivered his report straight to the Queen. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing deeply. "The bond between them is not only physical, the girl has grown fond of him. That could become dangerous." The Queen's expression hardened. "Love," she said the word with quiet disdain. "Love is loyalty's greatest enemy." She decided then that Ethan could not be allowed too much freedom. That day, when he was about to walk in the gardens again, the guards changed his route and took him underground to a new place, a research hall filled with cold lights and machines. A team of white-coated scientists stood ready. They asked him to sit, and they connected wires to his arm. He watched silently as the machines hummed. "What is this for?" he asked. "To understand the gift that lives in your blood," the lead scientist replied without meeting his eyes. Hours passed while they took samples and recorded his vital signs. Each time the machines touched his skin, a dull pain spread through his body, as if the luminous veins were fighting to stay his own. That night, Clara found out what had happened. She ran through the palace to her mother's study, tears bright in her eyes. "Why are you treating him like a prisoner?" she demanded. "He saved my life, deserves respect." The Queen looked up from her desk, calm as stone. "Everything I do for you, Clara. He is connected to you in ways we cannot risk. Do you not see that?" "I see a man who did nothing but help me," Clara said. "And now you're turning him into something less than human." The Queen's tone grew sharp. "Enough. You will not speak of this again. He is to remain where he is." Clara left in silence, but her anger burned quietly. Out. That night, she reached out to Ethan through the strange connection that linked them. He was weak and dizzy, resting on his bed when he felt her voice in his mind. "I'm sorry," she whispered inside his thoughts. "I didn't know they would do this." Ethan answered without words, only by the calm in his breathing. It was enough. In the days that followed, more tests came, and Ethan learned how to hide his strength. He pretended weakness so they would stop pushing him. At the same time, he began to plan. He now understood that the Queen did not want to protect him. She wanted to own him. Still, he did not hate her. He pitied her. A ruler afraid of losing control would always create her own cage. But the cage built around Ethan was meant to contain something far stronger than fear. The first crack in its walls was already forming in the heart of her daughter. The days in the lower palace passed slowly, one blending into another. Ethan Ward lived under watch like a caged hawk. His guards treated him with uneasy respect, but no friendly words passed between them. Every few days, scientists came again with their machines, taking new samples from his blood. They spoke little, only writing notes and whispering about what they found. The Queen wanted results, something that would make her army stronger, something to guard her throne forever. Ethan spent most of his time in silence. He had learned to calm his thoughts, to wait, to observe. He still felt the bond with Clara deep inside him, like a quiet heartbeat that linked them no matter how far apart they were. It was his only comfort, the one reminder that he was not alone. One evening, a guard brought his meal later than usual. When the door opened, he noticed the man's nervous eyes. Tucked under the plate of food was a small folded piece of paper. Ethan waited until the guard left before opening it. The writing was shaky but familiar. It was Clara's. "They are planning something new," the note read. "Mother will move you to the main lab in 2 days. They think they can take what is inside your blood and give it to others. I am trying to stop her. Be ready." Ethan stared at the words for a long time. His chest tightened. He had known it might come to this, but seeing it written by Clara's hand made it real. He had to act before the Queen turned his gift into a weapon. That night he found a small wire under his bed, a forgotten tool from one of the science teams. It was barely the size of a finger, but long enough to unlock the simple latch on his door. The guards outside never imagined he would try to escape through quiet patience rather than brute force. When midnight passed and the hallway lights dimmed, Ethan used the wire on the latch, careful not to make a sound. The lock clicked softly. He waited, listening for footsteps. None came. Slowly he slid out of the room, moving through the narrow corridor and into the darker passages of the palace. He remembered every turn from his earlier days in freedom, back when he was allowed to walk the upper halls. Now his steps led him toward the air docks where small service crafts were kept, but his plan did not go unnoticed. Cameras watched almost every hall in the palace, and one of the guards on night duty spotted his movement. An alarm rang through the lower levels, red lights flashing. Ethan broke into a run. Wind from the vents blew across his face as he climbed the metal stairs. He reached the upper bay and heard a voice calling his name. He turned on. There stood Clara. She was dressed in a plain cloak, her hair hidden under its hood. "You can't stay," she said quickly. "They're coming. We have to go now." He hesitated. "Clara, if you come with me, your mother will call it treason." "I know," she said, "but I'm not leaving you here." They dashed together through the dock's open gate. Outside, the night sky of Valoria stretched wide, painted with twin moons. They raced toward a small transport ship. The engines were cold, but Ethan worked fast to start them. His training came back in quick motions: switch, throttle, ignition. Lights flickered to life. Then the Queen appeared at the far end of the dock, followed by her guards. The glow from the emergency lights showed her face, calm but filled with fury. "Stop," she shouted, her voice ringing across the metal walls. "You do not understand what you are throwing away. Your blood is the key to eternal safety for us all. I will not let you waste it." Ethan stood at the ramp, wide awake now, heart pounding. "You cannot build peace by trapping people, Your Majesty. You taught your daughter to rule, but you forgot to teach her mercy." The Queen's eyes softened for a brief second, then hardened again. "You will not leave this place alive." Before her soldiers could aim, Clara stepped in front of Ethan. "If you hurt him, Mother, you will lose me too." The Queen froze. The moment held still, the air heavy with silence. Ethan took that instant. He pressed the ship's trigger and a burst of light blinded the room. The ramp closed, engines roared, and the vessel shot upward into the dark. But something strange happened. The connection that bound his life to Clara's flared with new heat. He felt a rush of pain and saw blinding white light through his vision. "Ethan," Clara cried as he collapsed, his hand still gripping hers. He forced a breath, his voice weak. The linket's reacting. It's trying to protect us both. A wave of energy filled the small ship, and sensors crackled. The Queen's guards covered their faces as a blinding pulse erupted outward. When it faded, the Queen found herself still standing in the dock, but her soldiers were looking around in confusion. The ship was gone, vanished into the quiet night sky. Above the clouds, in that stolen transport, Clara held Ethan close. Faint light still glowed beneath his skin where the bond had burned brightest. She looked at him with tears and hope mixed together. "We're free," she whispered. But Ethan opened his eyes slowly, breathing through pain. "For now," he said. Freedom is never free for long. Down below, Queen Helena stared at the empty sky. For the first time in years, she looked not like a ruler, but a mother who had lost something she could never truly command. The stolen ship drifted far from Valoria's bright world. The engines hummed softly as it crossed the silent path toward the outer fields. Where light from the twin moons faded into endless black, Clara sat beside Ethan, her hands trembling slightly. Lay on the ship's cot, his skin pale, the strange red glow under his veins weaker now. The bond that had once tied their lives together had saved them, but it had also drained much of his strength. For hours, the only sound was the soft hum of the craft. Clara stared at the stars through the window, wondering what they had become. Runaways, traitors, or something else entirely. When Ethan stirred, she turned quickly to him. "You're awake," she said quietly. He gave a tired smile. "Seems I can't die that easily." "Don't joke," she said, though her voice wavered with relief. "You nearly did." Ethan pushed himself up slowly. "Where are we now?" "Far beyond patrol range," she answered. "No signal from the palace. I cut all trackers before we left." He nodded weakly. "You thought of everything." "I learned from you," she said gently. For a while, they sat without speaking. Then he asked, "Do you think your mother will come after us?" Clara looked down. "Well, not out of love, but duty. She believes power is safety. She doesn't see yet that control can destroy what it tries to protect." Ethan reached out, taking her hand. "She will see it one day. People change when truth finds them." Clara smiled faintly but said nothing. Days passed as they moved from one small world to another, hiding among broken moons and quiet ports. They lived simply, trading small repairs and metalwork for food. Ethan grew stronger, though the luminous marks on his arm remained, a reminder of what his blood had done. The bond between him and Clara also changed. It no longer pulsed with constant pain, but deep calm, like two flames burning from the same wick. One evening, while they shared food inside the small ship, a message signal blinked on the screen. Clara looked up sharply. "It's a royal code," she said. "Encrypted." Ethan hesitated. "Could be a trick." "I'll open it anyway," she whispered. Her fingers moved over the panel, and the image of Queen Helena appeared, tired but calm. She looked thinner, the light in her eyes dimmer than before. "My daughter," came her voice. "And Captain Ward, you may not believe this, but I am not sending soldiers. I only wish to speak." Ethan and Clara exchanged a glance. Clara pressed the reply key. "We're listening." The Queen's eyes softened. "I was wrong," she said slowly. "In trying to protect a crown, I forgot what that crown stands for. You both showed me that courage cannot be created from fear. Valoria has changed since you left. People speak of what you did. They call your escape an act of freedom, not rebellion." Clara's voice shook. "Then why send this message now?" Helena sighed. "Because your name, Clara, is being called by the council to lead. I am too tired to rule. I want peace, and peace may only come through you. But I know you will not return without trust, so I offer you both a choice. Come home freely. No more chains, no more tests." The screen faded. Silence filled the room again. Ethan studied Clara's face. "Do you believe her?" She thought for a moment. "I think I want to. Maybe this is the chance to make things right." He nodded slowly. "Then we go back together." When their ship returned to Valoria weeks later, the once bright palace looked different. The gold shimmer still glowed, but now the gates were open and people waited outside. The Queen herself stood on the steps without guards, wearing a simple gown instead of her crown. As Ethan and Clara approached, she lowered her head. "Welcome home," she said softly. Ethan did not answer at first. He saw kindness in her eyes where once there had been only control. The queen looked at Clara. The people are ready for you, my daughter. They know you as more than a princess now. They call you a bringer of light. Clara stepped closer and took her mother's hands. I will help lead, she said gently, but with Captain Ward beside me. No secrets. No blood experiments. Only truth. Helena nodded slowly, a tear falling down her cheek. Then you will succeed where I could not. In the days that followed, Clara became the new queen of Valoria. The people cheered for her kindness, her strength, and the captain who had given his life's blood for hers. Ethan never returned to the army. Instead, he chose to stay near Clara as her protector and friend. Together, they rebuilt the world's broken peace, turning the cold palace into a place of open learning and compassion. At night, when the lights of Valoria shimmered over the still rivers, Ethan would walk the palace walls, watching the horizon. He had once been a soldier, a prisoner, a runaway. Now he was something rarer, man free to choose his own fate. Clara sometimes joined him, silent beside him as they looked at the stars. She would smile softly and say, "Do you ever wish you'd stayed away?" And he would shake his head. No, freedom means little without someone worth coming back for. Above them, the night sky seemed to shine brighter. As if the stars themselves remembered their story, the soldier who had given his blood to save a princess and found not death, but a bond strong enough to change a kingdom forever.